This is the Clean Energy Show with Brian Stockton and James Whittingham.
Hello, welcome to episode 27 of the Clean Energy Show. I'm Brian Stockton.
And I'm James Whittingham. Welcome to the second half of the year, our first year of 10. And boy, am I excited, Brian, because we are the only podcast that has fun talking about clean energy news. Most people, very dry. Us, we like to have fun. Why? Brian, we're fun people, are we not?
Oh, we're the funnest.
Yeah, nobody's more fun than us. Nobody's more fun than... I've got a funny hat on right now, just to prove my point. You can't see it, but you'll just have to take my word for it. I put out a promo last week, Brian, a Audiogram Promo, and it got no likes.
Well, where do you post something like that?
On the Facebook, on the Twitter, on the Instagram. No likes.
Well, I guess people are they're already listening and subscribed to the show, so they don't need the promo.
Okay. Well, I have something to tell you, though. It had a big impression on people.
Oh, yeah?
I was surprised. I thought, no likes, okay. Well, people don't like things anymore. Why don't you like things anymore? Why is it so hard to hit the like button? I mean, come on.
I've cut way back on my likes.
Why? Why? Because your finger, you're just saving it? You're saving it for what?
Yeah, I don't want to get carpal tunnel.
No. Okay. Well, listen, one person not only asked me to run for mayor of Regina because of that promo.
Wow.
They nagged me with repeated messages.
And
I'm not running for mayor of Regina. I'm a podcast host, and that's as far as it goes.
You sure I can't convince you?
Get off my case. I can't stand the pressure. No, it's a thankless job, and you have to really be more of a narcissist than even I am, and really want to be in the spotlight and have go to crappy events every night and not even get paid for it. No, I don't want to be the mayor of Regina. The Sask EV Association contacted us saying, hey, can we have an interview on the show? You know, it's a big deal now that we got Audiogram Promos with no likes. So, yeah, you got people clamoring to be on the show. And why shouldn't they be clamoring to be on the show? Everyone should be clamoring to be on our show.
I'm clamoring to be on it right now.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And you know, I've got other people that just contacted me, just saying, hey, about the show. So the promo somehow had a good effect last week. So I expect our listenership to be up significantly. Let's just put it that way.
Fantastic.
Now, Brian, there's people who are waiting for your damn video of the Supercharger network, and there's some people who are just very impatient with that. Hasn't made any progress at all. You're lazy. Just admit it.
I think I admitted that already. Yes, I am.
Okay. We want to know about your movie Tenet decision.
Yes, but first of all, I'm going to explain why I'm lazy.
Okay.
I don't think I told you this story before, but how my pandemic began?
No.
So it's been months now, right, that we've been in kind of lockdown. And
is it 6? Is it 5.5? Something like that?
It's a very long time. But you remember back to the early days of the pandemic, everybody was trying to figure out, okay, well, what do we do with our time? And it's like, okay, well, maybe there's a chance to do some stuff around the house that we wouldn't have had time for otherwise.
My nephew sold his Tesla stock and bought lumber stock because of that very notion. And so far, it's actually paid off for him. Well,
and exactly, lumber is going through the roof because people they can't spend their money on other things, so they're fixing up the house. But here's my story. Very early on in the pandemic, my brilliant idea was to clean underneath and behind the refrigerator.
Underneath and behind the refrigerator. Got you.
Yeah. It's one of those things you're always supposed to do, you know, especially if you've got coils at the back of your fridge to clean them off, make sure everything continues to run properly. And so, you know, it's been 5 or 6 years since we kind of rebuilt our kitchen. It's never been cleaned. So my brilliant idea was to pull out the fridge. It's on wheels, pull it out, clean underneath and behind. And I couldn't do it. We used all 4 people in our household to try and pull out the fridge. It's a little awkward. Like, it's hard to get a grasp of it, which is part of the issue.
How do you even get 4 people touching a fridge? I don't understand.
We brought in crowbars.
Oh my God.
To lift it up because it wasn't rolling like it should. So like there's little feet that we screwed out of the way, so the feet were lifted up, so it should have been just sitting on its wheels. And
was
then
it professionally installed? Or did you
yes,
do
it was professionally installed.
Okay.
And we got crowbars out to kind of lift it up a little bit so that we could lift it up and then pull it forward. We failed. 4 human beings could not pull out the fridge. And that's how my pandemic began. And I feel like I never really recovered from that.
You just gave up. You just threw in the towel.
Yeah.
I can't move my fridge. There's no point in doing anything.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Okay, so we had a Twitter poll saying, should you, Brian Stockton, risk your life to see Tenet in IMAX in glorious 70 millimeter?
And what are the results of that poll?
68% said yes, 32% said no, and some people who's on the no side were quite adamant that you should not risk your life because there's no masks at the theater. What do you say? Oh,
and masks are not required. I didn't realize that. Yeah, well, I voted yes. I voted in the poll because, I was leaning towards going. I will add, too, that I'm going to sit in the front row.
Oh, really?
A lot of people don't necessarily like to sit in the front row, but I sat in the front row.
More people like to sit in the back
for 2001: A Space Odyssey. Yeah, people tend to sit back because the screen is so huge, but I sat in the front row for 2001: A Space Odyssey, and it was spectacular. So
why? Because it just completely enveloped your vision?
It completely envelops, and since the whole point of IMAX is a gigantic screen, sitting close and making it as gigantic as possible is not a detriment. It's a positive thing.
Oh, you didn't get dizzy or anything?
Nope. Yeah, so it starts today. I was checking up, there's a website called in70mm.com, and this is the reason I'm risking my life is because it's just a rare thing. There's only about 13 cinemas in the world that are playing it on 15 perf 70mm IMAX film, and one of those is here in our city. So
we live in a city of 200,000. We don't have a lot going on for us.
Mm-hmm.
We have, in fact, I can't think of anything.
No, we've got nothing else going for us, but we are one of around 13 places in the world where you can see it in the format that it was really intended. A lot of the film was shot in that format, of that and regular 70 millimeter. So this is really the only way to see it the way it's intended to be seen.
Why would you even shoot something like that for 13 cinemas? And one of them's in Regina, Saskatchewan. The expense and the trouble. I can't, as somebody in the filmmaking biz, I just can't imagine somebody doing that.
It is pretty strange. So yeah, it's Christopher Nolan, and he can do it because he's one of the top directors working now. It's a legacy thing. I mean, if you want the best format, this is the best format. And one of my film professors always used to say, cinema is forever. So you should never skimp when you're making the movie because, it's going to live 10, 20, 50, 100 years from now. You're not going to want to look at it 20, 30 years from now and realize, oh, I cut corners on that. Cinema is forever. You want to get it right the first time, do as good a job as possible the first time. So if I was a rich guy, I would shoot in that format too.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Really? Even like something like The Sabbatical, which is just a character piece.
Okay, well that's a little ridiculous. No. If it's a little character study,
it has
comedy.
to be action, right? It has to be a grander scale film. Okay. Well, I think as a fellow movie director, you have to be in solidarity with Nolan and go see his film because there's only so many people who can.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and they're selling only 30 tickets per screening. They're starting at 9 a.m., so I'll probably hit a 9 a.m. screening. Yeah, so, shouldn't be even, I don't think they'll even sell 30 tickets. So,
really? That's the middle of the day for you, 9 a.m.
Oh, yeah, I've been up for hours at 9. So, and again, I'll sit in the front row, which is, I think, the farthest away from, you get the whole space in front of you. I think it'll be fine.
Well, I await your review before I give it my consideration. I'm very curious about it, although... Yeah, I need to know how full the theater is and stuff like that and get some feedback on sort of what shows are busy and what are not. So are they staggering it completely through the day because there's only so many tickets? Or
Yes, it starts at 9 a.m. and then there's 4 or 5 screenings throughout the day.
Will it be 9 a.m. after Labor Day, after things get going again?
Well, look on the website. They've got about the first month posted, I think. So you can see, I think it's at 9 a.m. for at least the first few weeks.
Well, here's another thing. The film will degrade. The print will degrade.
Yes, that's the other thing about film is it is always best to see the film print when it's fairly fresh because, they do get scratched and dirty over time. The IMAX projectors do a really good job of not wrecking the prints, as long as they're used properly. But it is true. You don't want to wait too long. The print gets old. It gets, scratched or dirty.
I think I know the projectionist. He goes to my gym, Trevor.
Oh, yeah.
So,
yeah. I've had lots of great conversations with Trevor about projecting. He's been a projectionist in our fair city since the 1970s. And he's told me that he projected Star Wars in 1977 at the Roxy Cinema, which is when I would have seen it when I was about 12.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And he's been projecting since then.
I thought he was just a little bit older than me. Holy cow. That's, I must have been 11 or 12, and he must have been 19 or 20, I bet, or something like that.
Yeah, probably something like that, yeah.
Wow, that's history. That's like, wow.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing. Film projectionist. Talk about your dying breeds. Oh, my God. There's not many of them around anymore. And, you should make a documentary on them, for God's sake. Maybe that's what you should be doing if you weren't so damn lazy.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent idea.
Maybe we should have him on the show. Talk about clean energy. I know he was a fan of your last film because he did see it. So
yeah.
Okay. Well, Brian, on today's show, what do you have for us coming up?
Well, I've got a few stories here. Tesla has dropped some hints about electric aircraft coming in 3 to 4 years. I want to talk about drying clothes in winter, which is a scintillating story. Suncor has stopped insurance coverage for oil and gas.
Yeah, and I've got some stories too, including what I try to do when possible is have a big story that affects the overall climate optimism in my soul. And the one that I'm picking this week is very close to home. And I'm going to get to that in a minute, but I wanted to say that my partner, Jan, had a COVID test. Yeah, she, and I just wanted to say how it went down for reference sake, because she called the local health line on Friday, midday, around noon, and was told that they have less people on the weekend, which I thought, it's a pandemic, why do weekends don't exist? What if it was, things were taking off? And then, so Sunday, midday, she had her test 2 days later, and then 1 day later, she had her results. So, and it was negative.
Good.
So 3 days, I thought I might die. So,
did she have the sniffles? Was she concerned?
She had a bit of a fever with a migraine. She never gets fevers with migraine. She had frequent migraines recently, and she came down with that and one other symptom, which I can't remember, which was concerning. But she works with families out in the community, so she's out there. And so one day, I live with that fear every day of dying, so it was only a little bit more than normal anyway. So I'm going to end the show this week when we get to the end with, after, listeners' favorite, the lightning round. We're going to... I'm going to have optimistic news because there's a guy on Twitter who has his own podcast who has every week comes up with 5 points of optimistic news about the climate. So that's how I'm going to end the show this week. But if you don't mind, I'm going to start with my big story of the week, and that is Lumsden, Saskatchewan is doing something that hasn't been done in Saskatchewan before, and that is battery storage.
Here in Lumsden, the federal government announced $1.1 million to support solar projects in the area. The money from the federal Low Carbon Economy Fund will help cover 40% of project costs. The wastewater treatment plant will also have battery storage installed, which Wilkinson says will allow the plant to run on solar power at all times. Over the life of the project, the town expects to save over $2,200,000 and will use it to invest in more climate change initiatives.
Okay, so are you surprised by this?
Not really. It's makes economic sense to do things like this, so that's why they're starting to happen.
Well, things that make sense don't necessarily happen in our province.
Good point.
And there's the pipeline plane making a low-pass flight over my house right now. Anyway, seems like all is good. Yeah, it's big because when solar storage comes to Canada, I get excited. You got excited. Because it's not taking off everywhere. It's a theory. But the fact that it's coming 30 kilometers northwest to a small town, and it's not a First Nations reservation where they're doing some advanced things that the government's not doing. The government is not doing this. The town is doing it. So it's a municipal government who's being smarter than our stupid provincial government, which is lagging behind on solar initiatives and everything else, and basically living in the dark ages, which is basically what I'm saying, Brian Stockton, is that when battery storage comes to us, we're the last place on earth to get anything. And when an electric car came here, it was exciting. Battery storage is coming here. And yes, they've got 40% of it is paid by the federal government on the new initiative, and people should be jumping on that initiative. That's kind of what exploded the solar thing. And, we have basically no solar initiatives at all. So what are they doing? They're storing the solar. Instead of in the grid, they're storing it on a battery, and they're using it for the sewage pumping station. And it's going to save them. They're spending a lot of money, but it'll save them $500,000. They said it was more than that, but it's when you factor in the net savings, it's about they're $500,000 ahead. So for a small town, that's not a small chunk of change. And the pipeline plane is taking a second pass. Did it find something? It's a big brown spot. It's hurt now. Anyway, so it's a big deal, and so they're having 2 football field size arrays of solar. And it's going to run their city services. And the government, like I said, 40%. But the government has to subsidize climate change activities right now in order for us to get to the goal. But the fact that solar and battery storage is coming right here in Saskatchewan is incredibly encouraging to me, because what's it going to be 5-10 years from now? Everywhere, it's going to be ubiquitous.
Yeah, a few things. I think we've seen this before, where civic governments are able to move sometimes faster on these kinds of things. They're a little bit smaller and more nimble. In terms of battery storage, I think we've discussed before, like, we're kind of late to that party, probably mostly because our power has tended to be pretty cheap over the years. Battery storage is huge in Australia, but that's partly because their electricity costs a lot more. But the costs are coming down to the point where with a little bit of subsidy, it makes sense to put in batteries. We've complained many times about our provincial power utility, who recently cut back their solar initiative. So they're giving you a terrible price for your solar. But if you can afford the batteries, then you don't even have to feed into the grid. You feed into your batteries instead. So it doesn't matter that they're giving you a terrible rate for it.
Right. And just the fact that it's getting close, a 40% subsidy is pretty big, but if it saves you $500,000 with your own investment, then if we can start doing that on a mass scale now with the government subsidy, then it's gonna establish it. It's going to be a proven technology. It's going to be a known technology, and of course the prices are going to come down. So, what's your story of the week?
Bird-friendly wind turbines.
A favorite of mine. You know why? I'll tell you why, Brian, because I know you're going to ask. I have this great aunt. Well, she is literally the great aunt to my children, but she's a wonderful aunt who is part of our family and very maternal to us. She is a retired librarian and a very wise woman, and one of the few wise people in my family. It's always refreshing when somebody's not a redneck. So she was like against wind turbines because of the bird thing. She's a very much, she used to be in her old days a cat person. Do you know how many birds that cats kill?
Oh, it's billions, isn't it?
It's literally in the billions, and or at least hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions. And I would fathom that my neighbor's cat, Stinkers, probably kills 200 birds a year.
Wow.
I would guess, because he annihilated our baby robins.
Wow.
We were trying to protect them. I swear to God we were, but Yeah, it's nature is tough. I can see that just in my own backyard and just beyond my backyard in the pipeline. There's a lot of. I'm glad I'm a human because the whole nature thing is hell.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got 6 dragonflies per hour committing suicide in my pool. I have to scoop them out and keep them alive, and sometimes they don't make it. And I'm sad. Yeah. I want to keep them alive because they eat mosquitoes, right? Or larvae.
I don't have the story in front of me, but I'm maybe look for it. They were releasing a bunch of mosquitoes in Florida. Did you hear that?
No.
I'm going to Google it here quickly. It's a pretty crazy story. See if I can find it here. Yeah. So in Florida, they're going to release 750 million genetically modified mosquitoes in an attempt to get rid of the other mosquitoes or to somehow quell the population. It seems crazy.
So if you have sexual relations with these mosquitoes, you'll become impotent and lay
It is something
eggs?
like that. If they introduce them into the ecosystem and they meld with the other mosquitoes or something, they promise that this is going to get rid of the bad mosquitoes.
Oh, just the bad ones.
That carry Zika virus and things like that.
Oh. Well, I'm against mosquitoes. However, I don't like messing with nature. I mean, are you worried about that?
Yes, I'm very worried about that. But let's get back to the wind turbines. So there's a study from the Norwegian Institute for Nature Research. And almost the most interesting thing about this story to me was just how long they took to release this study. They worked on this for 11 years. And for the first 7.5 years, they went around and they collected data about how many birds were dying around various wind turbines. And then they painted one of the 4 wind turbine blades black. The rest are white. And then for another 3.5 years, they went around and again collected data, and they found a 72% reduction in the number of birds killed if you just paint one of the 4 turbines black.
Pretty easy. I will say this. That would be a bit of a distraction. I'd like to see what that looks like. Because the one of the drawbacks of wind, you know what I found in that study also is the discussion around that is that people actually prefer wind. Maybe this is paid for by wind and it's tainted, but people actually prefer wind turbines next to them than solar. I don't understand that. What's the big deal about solar? There's no headaches. There's no whine. There's no birds dying. Well,
yeah.
I think even solar kills birds, but I remember reading before that all other types of power generation kill more birds than wind turbines, and solar does too. And that is including like a nuclear plant, which is just releasing steam or something. So, I mean, birds run into my windows in my very house. I also was surprised with that story that certain birds will kill themselves running into not the blade, but the tower of the turbine. And also, encouraging news, and I've said this before, this was my own theory, and I had it confirmed by reading the stories that wind turbines are now getting bigger and they move slower, so there's less birds dying from them. And you know what, Brian?
I didn't realize that.
In the study, there wasn't millions of birds being killed by these blades, spinning like a table fan. It was like, 6 here and 12 there. I like birds, like I said, try to protect them from my neighbor's cat. But what are you going to do? I think that, everybody, including Mr. Trump, has used birds as an excuse not to have these big, deadly wind mills, as he calls them, which is my pet peeve. They're not a windmill. Windmill actually churns grain into flour, I believe.
Yeah. Now we just have to do something about all those house cats.
Breed them with mosquitoes so they fly around.
Hey, there's an idea.
I don't think we'll be able to do anything with the house cats. I wish they would concentrate on the mice in the neighborhood instead of the birds. That's all I got to say to the cats. Any cats who are listening out there, I want you to think about that. So a new study says solar can boost the value of houses in the UK by over £30,000. And that I find curious because it's like swimming pools. In a place that has a hot climate where people are used to swimming pools, know what a swimming pool is, appreciate and would use a swimming pool, it boosts the value of a house. In Canada, swimming pools do not boost the value of a house. In fact,
our neighbor got rid of his swimming pool before he sold the house.
Oh, really? An in-ground?
Yeah.
Wow. That's a shame. I would have bought it. Neighbors are bad, but what are you going to do?
Yeah.
The research comes from effectivehome.co.uk, a website dedicated to providing information and guidance for homeowners regarding solar. It found that installing solar PV can increase house prices by an average of £32,459. Now, I know that the energy market is different in the UK. I don't know if you know more about it than me, but they appreciate solar is probably more there than it is where we live. It's more appreciated. I'm guessing the electricity prices are higher. Do you know anything on that?
I'm not certain, but I would wager to guess quite a bit higher than here.
I questioned it when I did my house. Let's put it that way. When I did my house, they told me, they cited these studies in the U.S. that said it raised the price, and my real estate agent just laughed at that and said, no, nobody knows what solar is here. They don't appreciate it. They don't care the fact that it's going to lower your bill. So I'm worried about that. And in fact, I advise people, if you're putting solar on your roof, keep in mind that if you sell your house, you may not get it back.
Yeah, it definitely works better if you're planning to be in your house for a long time.
At least here, where it's not.
Yeah, at least here.
But Brian, I'm hoping that'll change once we have more solar around and people will start to understand it and know the importance of it and maybe even embrace it. So, yeah.
Okay, I got a quick story here that I teased off the top. Insurance giant Suncor to end coverage and finance for the oil and gas industry. We've had stories like this before. There are some of the major players who are just starting to refuse to do business with oil and gas, and it's great.
Except for the oil and gas people. But yes, it's just one more. You know, I did read this week that the oil and gas industry said that doesn't matter. All this divestment doesn't matter. It's not going to affect us. And I don't know if that's true or not, but they still need to get capital. And if the banks are giving them a hard time and not wanting to invest in them, that's important. It's an important message, if nothing else, that the world, including the business community, because there's nothing more businessy than bankers, are starting to give a crap about the environment, or at least their identity that's hooked up with it.
Okay, I want to introduce a new segment on the show.
Oh my God, I was wondering. It's been so long.
It's called The Boring Story of the Week.
The Boring Story of the Week with Brian Stockton.
So, you have I assume, a washer and a dryer in your house, correct?
Let me stop you there.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Do you ever dry your clothes outside on the line?
No, but the missus wants to.
Now, it turns out here in North America, we have a way higher than average dryer use. In the United States, 92% of people use a dryer to dry their clothes. In Canada, it's 81%, lower than the U.S. But in lots of countries, they just don't do that. Like in China, only 3% of people use a dryer. They just dry them on the line. And of course, this saves a lot of energy. But in clicking through to this story, this was from Clean Technica. They mentioned that you can dry clothes outside in the winter. Have you ever heard of that?
I have, because my mother, who came of age towards the end of the dirty 30s, that's not true. That's not true. She was 5, but she was highly influenced by the dirty 30s.
Yep.
Did that. And the clothes would freeze.
Yeah.
She didn't always do that. She was a big laundry person. She was a nurse and very clean and all that. And was washing things probably more than linen, probably more than they needed it. So yeah, no, my mother did that. She had a big, long double clothesline with 2 big metal poles. And that was just part of life growing up. She'd have a basket with a bunch of clothes clips in it, and would just go out there and put the laundry up in a line. It would come back smelling air fresh, like they fake in, scents now.
It certainly is. Yeah, it always smells fresh when you dry your clothes on the line. I don't do it that often because I'm lazy, as we've already established. But can you remember that in the winter? Like, what was that like when she did that in the winter?
Well, I'll tell you, I think some days it would come back cold and not frozen because of the sun. The same reason that the sun melts the ice on the solar panels on my roof at -17 on some days where there's no wind and the sun is in a certain zest is probably the same reason that it didn't freeze them solid.
Well, there's some suggestion here. I clicked around the internet, and that even if it's -40, apparently you can put your clothes out there. They will freeze solid. You bring them inside leave them overnight. And when you bring them in, they will melt or, warm up and be almost dry, like maybe just be a little damp.
Really?
Apparently. But we'll have to wait for the winter to test this out. Yeah.
Get back to a future episode. Can I just say this? September 22nd is the battery day for Tesla.
Yep.
Which is going to be part of your story here. And the Liberal government in Canada is they've prorogued Parliament, they've shut it down, and they're going to come back with what they're touting as something akin to a Green New Deal, a COVID recovery with transforming the economy to a lower carbon economy. This is all going to happen on, I think, this 22nd or within a day of that. And we've got a show on the 23rd, which is my birthday, by the way. I'll be turning 106. And it's going to be a huge show. I think we're going to have to bring in extra staff, a secretarial pool, researchers. I just think it's going to be a big deal. That's less than a month from now.
And just quickly here on Tesla, this story is from a couple of weeks ago, but when people complain about Tesla, and there are still people out there that think the whole company's a fraud and that the share price is not warranted. There was a settlement recently to do with Solar City. So Tesla acquired Solar City, which is a company owned by or started by Elon Musk's brother, I think. Is that what it is? And right. There's always been suggestions in the anti-Tesla crowd that this was somehow there was some malfeasance involved. And there was a settlement came down that said, yes, there was a little bit of malfeasance involved. So there was some fines doled out, not to Musk, but to some of the other directors, because Musk's fine is still coming up. There's still some case pending with him. So they did do something not quite right there. I don't fully understand it, but also it's I don't know, kind of a drop in the bucket compared to everything else. So it hasn't really affected the company in any serious way. But I just thought it was interesting because, sometimes, where there's smoke, there's fire. This is one of the things that the anti-Tesla bears have been complaining about. And it turns out there was maybe something to it, just not enough to, bring the company down or affect the bottom line.
All right, Brian, my last story before the lightning round is Ford starts construction on a new factory. This hot off the press is literally burning my laptop. Ford has started construction on a new factory for the all battery electric F-150 pickup truck. Ford sold about 900,000 F-Series pickup trucks last year. 900,000, bringing in $42 million in revenue. They have a plan to bring a F-150 to market, but not much is known about it. This is big news for me because first of all, and I've said this before, why is Ford so concerned about this? Why are they finally getting off their butts with the F-150? I'll tell you why, and I think you know why. It's because pickup trucks have a lot to do with machoism. And if the Cybertruck, which is coming out, and the Rivian, smallish pickup truck, mid-size maybe? No, it's small. Not too small, but small. They have incredible stats. They have incredible towing capacity and torque, like 1,000 nanometers of torque or whatever, and it's just that alone is like if your truck that your company is relied on for being the breadwinner, the prize, the big kahuna of the company becomes a laughingstock or becomes diminished in some way. Yeah, they're building a factory right now. They're worried about it, and that is a good thing. And this is another reason why we have to thank Elon Musk for getting off his butt and getting things advanced, because there's no way that Ford would be coming out with an F-Series pickup truck all electric right now, building a factory today as we speak. if it wasn't for Mr. Musk. Your thoughts?
Yeah, and I'm looking at the story right now. They're hoping to get it to market before 2022. So this is roughly like a year and a half from now. So I guess they're going to be able to build the factory and get them out within a year and a half. Do you think that's possible?
With Ford, sure. I mean, it's not like their first rodeo, so I don't see why not. My worry is that it will come out before the Cybertruck or at the same time.
Yeah, roughly the same time. I'd bet they'd get the Cybertruck out sooner.
But they haven't. They have broken ground on the Cybertruck factory, which is maybe that's in Austin, right? They have literally broken ground, and they are putting in pilings in Austin, Texas, for the Cybertruck factory as we speak.
Yes, and we'll hear more on Battery Day about the battery supply needed, because this is going to be a chief concern is battery supply once all of these manufacturers start ramping this stuff up. Let's do the lightning round.
The Clean Energy Show Lightning Round.
I will advise you that Brian works all week on the lightning round, doing mental quizzes and tests to get limber for the lightning round as I present many lightning round headlines to throw at him, and for his comments, it is, it's just something we do on the show, and it's loved by all. Here we go. Tesla holds 80% of the U.S. EV market despite losing the federal tax credit altogether. So is the federal tax credit necessary anymore, Brian Stockton?
Yeah, it's necessary for all the other slackers who are still trying to get their electric car businesses up and running.
Trump blames renewables for crashing the California power grid, but raw power supply shortages were actually to blame.
It's true that, everyone's transitioning and they may have shut down some gas plants too soon, but to blame it on renewables is of course, short-sighted and dumb.
Did you see that the one nuclear power plant they have has two parts to it, and the second part was getting decommissioned, and they said, well, no, let us fire it up, and they said no.
Okay.
It's not ready to be fired up. Okay. The government of Canada has partnered with Nunavut, the territory in the north, to improve energy efficiency and introduce renewable energy in 45 buildings in the South Baffin region. And the South Baffin region is nothing south about it. It's very north. The project will include solar panels, LED upgrades, air sealing, water savers, and more.
Yeah, I hadn't heard that story, but obviously that sounds great. You'd think that, being in an isolated place, that renewables are always a good idea.
Do they work, though?
Well, your solar is probably going to be not great during the winter months when the days are super short, but I'm sure they can figure that out.
And maybe some wind, some small-scale wind as well, I would think. Exxon Oil has been removed from the Dow Jones.
Yeah, I briefly saw that story. It's just, I guess, a sign of things to come. What, companies go in the Dow Jones is, I guess it waxes and wanes, and Exxon is, their best days are behind them.
Greta Thunberg, who I'm a big fan of, mentor, well, not a mentor, but a hero to me. I think she's done a great deal of work advancing the awareness and urgency of the climate crisis. She's done her gap year, and there's a picture of her going back to school, and she's very excited to be returning to school. Your thoughts?
Oh, what is she like? Do you mean like high school, or is this university? Or
she called it a gap year, but I'm pretty sure she's going back to school. I'm not sure. The regular high
like
school.
High school.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have no comment.
You have no comment. Do you think that it was good for her to take that year off?
Yes, because she's saving the planet. What could be more important than that?
Yeah, certainly not algebra.
No.
The UK pub chain is to install EV charge points at 2,700 of its pub venues.
Yeah, I read that story and I couldn't believe that they have 2,700 pubs in one chain.
Maybe that's not even
insane.
all of them. Maybe that's not even all. Maybe it's like the Starbucks of pubs.
There's probably fewer McDonald's and Starbucks than that. Yeah.
Wow. I'm not familiar with that chain, but apparently you can go there, juice up your electric car, and drive home drunk with no problem. Canadian develops dating app exclusively for Tesla owners. My comment, it's going to be a sausage fest. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, why not? Anybody can make an app these days, so more power to them.
Well, I only know one or two women Tesla owners around my bubble, my area of knowledge. So it's all the guys. Is that a problem? Is it a problem that it's the guys who are going for electric cars? Is it too techie? Is it just a male thing? I mean, come on. At what point do women get involved?
I don't know the answer to any of this, but certainly you and I are of the male persuasion, and our listeners, many of them are of the male persuasion. So I have no idea what's going on.
If you look at the Tesla launches, the fanboys in the crowd, there are probably, 15 men for every one woman, something like that, I would guess.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's give or take, but okay. Environment Canada's tweet, since we talked about this last week, a gas-powered lawnmower emits as much air pollution as driving 480 kilometers or 300 miles per hour. The EPA in the States estimates that hour for hour, gasoline-powered lawnmowers produce 11 times as much pollution as a new car. Not an old car, a new car. According to the EPA, each gas-powered lawnmower produces as much air pollution as 43 new automobiles driven 12,000 miles per year.
Yeah, gasoline-powered lawnmowers should be probably outlawed immediately, but what we have done here instead in Canada is introduce a carbon tax. So with that in place, gas-powered mowers are getting a bit more expensive, and you can buy a battery-powered lawnmower without the carbon tax, which should make it cheaper, make them more easy to own. So, we're moving in that direction.
Is there a carbon tax on lawnmowers, not just the fuel, but the mower?
I believe so. Yeah, anything that generates carbon is going to have the tax on it. Yep.
From a listener, sales of e-bikes in the United States increased 190% in June, year over year. Ridership of shared e-bikes, such as those owned by Lime and city bike share companies, have actually gone down during the pandemic.
Yeah, I guess people are sort of needing to commute less and staying home more. So I guess that kind of makes sense.
Oh, getting back to the house prices going up in London for solar, it says here £90,000 extra for solar on a house, according to their study.
That doesn't sound right.
No, it doesn't. I think you have to question studies sometimes because who's doing the study and what data are they trying to get? Chevy releases the first teaser pictures of a refreshed Bolt EV and new Bolt EUV, which I take it as a crossover built on the Bolt platform. Is the Bolt still relevant, Brian Stockton?
Well, not particularly, as we discussed earlier. But Tesla's got, 80% of the U.S. market. So, yeah, it's better than nothing. But, GM's got to really step it up here.
We probably have Bolt listeners listening to the show right now. I apologize to you, but remember when the Bolt came out, it was supposed to come out. We were very, very excited because it was a 222-mile range vehicle. So it was a long-range vehicle for a reasonable price. It was long before the Model 3, a couple of years before the Model 3, was it not?
I think so, a little bit before, yeah.
Okay, and my last lightning round story is green energy leads new U.S. generating capacity in 2020. That is to say, the energy capacity of electricity that has been added to the U.S. power grid was by far and above green more than anything else.
Yeah, that just makes sense. As we've discussed many times, the price of everything green is coming down, so it's just going to take over. It's just a matter of time.
And this concludes the lightning round.
Wait, the lightning round's not quite over.
What? What are you talking about?
Well, there's one story I teased the story at the beginning of the show, and then I forgot to mention it.
Okay.
So I'll throw the lightning round back to you. Oh. And it was just that story about Elon Musk tweeted that he sees electric aircraft in 3 to 4 years with the higher density battery coming. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, because it seems like the timeline is holding relevant because 5 years ago he said it would be, or I mean, a year ago he said it would be 5 years. A year later he's saying 3 to 4 years. So it's not there yet. It's not going to be unveiled in Battery Day. By the way, the stocks have gone up in price because of Battery Day.
I guess.
Well, there was a story out this morning that said it was like there was a big analyst who said 2,500 because of Battery Day, because this 1 million mile battery is going to be and the mass production is going to so He said 2,500. At some point, you're going to have to hire security to guard you. You're going to be so wealthy from this bloody stock. It's just, you're going to have to seal yourself in the bomb shelter and do nothing but podcasting down there, I think.
More money, more problems. What are you going to do?
So, yeah, there's a certain energy density that they have to reach for aircraft. And I think it's, I know 400 watts per kilogram or something like that.
400 watt hours per kilogram.
So it doesn't mean anything to anybody, but it just means that the weight and volume of the energy that it carries has to increase without increasing. The energy has to increase, the size and weight has to stay the same. Weight's important, obviously, for aircraft. I think, 3 to 4 years, where does that put us? Okay, let's say there's 2025. And they start making planes by 2030. I'm guessing short haul flights on electric aircraft is coming sooner than anyone thinks. I think we'll start to see them in 2030 on a fairly regular basis, and I think it'll really start to take off by the mid 2030s. We don't have to wait for 2050 for electric aircraft. And of course, the idea, as always, is not electricity is not okay by itself. You need to power that electricity with solar, which you can. And a lot of people pointed out, airports have a lot of space, a lot of land that's not being used. You just have these strips. You could fill that baby with solar everywhere, as long as it didn't reflect the sun into the pilot's eyes. They'd have to be careful about that. But yeah, actually, that's a thought to consider. I don't know. They have models to run on that. Anyway, that finally concludes the lightning round. And our show for this week. Brian, I want to remind everybody to go to Apple Podcasts and rate and review our show. It helps us so much, and it's what all podcasters have to beg their listeners to do, because that is the market that we live in. Apple owns everything. And our email, cleanenergyshow, one word, @gmail.com, cleanenergyshow@gmail.com. We're on Twitter, where we like to hear from you, no matter what your thoughts are. I don't care if it's your toiletry habits. It's Clean Energy Pod on Twitter. And where else are we? We're on SpeakPipe, where you can push a little button on your laptop or your phone and leave us a voice message, which is just a terrific addition to our show. That is speakpipe.com. Speakpipe.com/cleanenergyshow, one word. Brian, it's been fun. As always, it's been a good week, and I have some good energy news for you, some positive energy news. Number 1, Europe renewables generate more electricity than fossil fuels for the first time. Japan to beat 2030 renewables goal. After 200 years, one of the UK's last coal mines closes. Australia's Suncorp ends oil and gas insurance, as we've mentioned. And the world's largest grid battery has been energized. We'll see you next week.
Yeah, see you next week.